welcome to the Hate to Lose Sports Show. I am your host, Christian John Bradley, and here we enjoy sports while being encouraged because we don't just hate to lose in our sport, we hate to lose in life. Now, let's jump right in because we had a very exciting matchup between two Super Bowl contenders on Monday Night Football between the Baltimore Ravens and the Detroit Lions. A matchup that did not disappoint. Exciting plays left and right, but it ultimately ended with the Detroit Lions mauling the Baltimore Ravens 38-30. And the score is much closer than the game was because Baltimore scored a meaningless touchdown in the fourth quarter when the game was already out of reach. Now, what is the story here? It is the Detroit Lions seem to be a tier above the Baltimore Ravens. They held the Ravens under 100 yards rushing and gained over 400 yards of offense. And we also saw this. The Detroit Lions broke the Baltimore Ravens by breaking the Ravens' two top dogs, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. The Lions had high pressure on Lamar Jackson, sacking him 7 times in the entire game. And they also forced a game-breaking fumble on Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter. Now, let's dive a little bit deeper into what we saw there because it was not a pleasant sight watching Derrick Henry lose his mind, have a meltdown on the sideline after that fumble. And we watched it. We watched a man experience the guilt of committing the greatest football sin as a running back, which was fumbling the ball. And he's also done it 3 times in 3 games. His mistakes are now starting to become a part of who he is. He cares about performing his best. He cares about being there for his teammates and doing his part. But now it's eating up at his soul. You watched him flop on the bench after the Lions got into field goal range or got closer to scoring a touchdown, which they ultimately didn't. But you see him, no. Oh my gosh. What he needs to do is forgive himself, let it go, and allow himself and the confidence to start rebuilding. All right. Now, back to the larger discussion. Dan Campbell has proven to be an amazing identifier of talent because the Lions lost their 2 coordinators last season, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. And he found replacements who we all questioned after the first matchup against the Packers because they got beat down and blown out. But Dan Campbell is proving to be a mastermind of talent. And we're also seeing, of course, based on how they were performing last night and how they performed last week as well. But what also is happening with the Baltimore Ravens here? Because they cannot be considered a Super Bowl contending team right now. They just can't. Yeah, I know they have the 2-time MVP in Lamar Jackson and they have a great running attack and everything like that. But we know defense wins championships. Defense wins championships. And right now, the Baltimore Ravens give up the most yardage in the NFL and the 8th most points. They cannot win a Super Bowl that way. And we should not be talking about the Ravens like that. Because this week, they have the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going into Arrowhead Stadium for another heavyweight matchup. Now, speaking about the Chiefs big the Giants 22-9. And the first half was the same, much of the same that we've come to know and we've come to accept the last 2 seasons. Stale offense, not able to move the ball, just a complete disappointment. But the second half, they started to show signs of life. And what I mean by that is Patrick Mahomes started to push the ball downfield to Tyquan Thornton. Of course, Tyquan Thornton they end up connecting on one. I'm also really enjoying what I'm watching from Tyquan Thornton. He looks like he could be a really good receiver. All right, but there's a much bigger discussion here. The discussion is what has happened to the Chiefs' offense, because they have Andy Reid, largely considered one of the most brilliant offensive minds in the game. They have Patrick Mahomes, who is the best quarterback we've ever seen talent-wise in our life. But their offense does not reflect that. So here's a question. What has happened to their offense? They lost Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy was the Chiefs offensive coordinator from 2018 to 2022. And in that span of time, the Chiefs averaged 30 points per game. They had the best offense twice, top 5 offense twice, and was 6th once. And of course, they won 2 Super Bowls. 2022 was his last season. And we all thought it shouldn't be that big of a deal, right? They still got Andy Reid. They got Patrick Mahomes. They're still going to be the modern day version of the football version of the Golden State Warriors. And offense should be the least of their problems, right? But no, it's actually been the opposite. Offense has been the worst of their problems, because in the 2 years without Bieniemy as their offensive coordinator, Chiefs offensive production has dropped 8 points, only averaging 22 points per game in these 2 years. And they're on track to average less than that this year. Now, I understand the Chiefs don't have their full, the full talent. Xavier Worthy is injured and Rashee Rice is suspended. But this problem is systemic, and it will not be solved by people coming back. It just won't. But here's what we get from this, all right? We get, when a relationship has ended way too early, when both parties are worse off after the breakup. Here's what I mean. I gave you the stats of the Chiefs' offense after Bieniemy has left. But here's what Bieniemy has experienced after leaving the Chiefs. Bieniemy had a few years of being the hot topic of becoming an NFL head coach after the Chiefs. That never happened. He had a failed stint in UCLA, and now he is the Chicago Bears running backs coach. Bieniemy is worse off. So the Chiefs need to improve their offense to actually be the Chiefs that we've come to know and love. They actually need Bieniemy to return, to be a contender. Now, speaking of contenders, we had a matchup between 2 contending teams with the Los Angeles Rams and the Philadelphia Eagles. My goodness, am I devastated. Heartbroken. Oh, it's going to take me some time, honestly. Because the Rams were enjoying a 26-7 lead in the third quarter. But I turned to my wife. I said, I'm still not comfortable with this lead because there's still too much time left. And that's exactly what we saw, because the Eagles end up scoring 26 unanswered points to win the game. 26 unanswered points to win the game. Eagles have beaten the Rams 4 straight times, and it's mental now. But we also starting to see that Jalen Hurts is the ultimate competitor. He does what is required when it matters most, and he always rises to the occasion when the moment is the biggest, throwing 3 touchdowns in the second half. He played extremely, extremely well. Now back to the Rams, though, because this matchup with the Eagles is now mental. It's in their head. But what's also comes to my mind is this is starting to remind me when the 49ers were dominating the Rams. See, in 2019 through 2021 regular season, the 49ers beat the Rams 6 straight times, but the Rams ended up prevailing in the NFC Championship game in 2022. This reminds me of that. Here's what I mean. But will history replicate itself? That's the question. Will it replicate itself? And yes, it will. I can't stay down long, man. I don't care. I can't stay down long. History will replicate itself, and the Rams will beat the Eagles in the playoff when they meet again. Here's why. Right now, the Rams are the only team in the NFL with a top 5 offense and defense yardage-wise, and they are also lead the NFL in sacks with 12, tied with the Broncos. But we lead because LA. Let's go. But there we have it, an amazing weekend of NFL football. And at the end of every episode, I always want to leave you with something that could feed your soul, because again, we don't just hate to lose in sports, we hate to lose in life. And to do that actually bring us back to Derrick Henry. Because what we saw in Derrick Henry was that because he was not performing well, he did not feel like he was valuable, and we saw the painstaking expression of that on the sideline. But that's why we have to remember this crown card, which says, "Who I am transcends what I do. My identity is not tied to this outcome." When you care about doing something, when you have a passion, you want to perform well, it's natural to put our identity and wrap our identity around the performance in what we care about the most. But that's dangerous, because that means when we are successful in that thing, our sense of self is elevated. But when we fail and we don't perform, our sense of self is reduced, it shrinks, which is why it's so important to know that who I am transcends what I do, and that my identity is not tied to this outcome. Who you are outside of anything. You are loved, you are chosen, you are created to prosper, you are created to win right where you are. It does not change if you win, and it does not change if you lose. All right? There we have it. From the Hate to Lose Sports Show, I'm your host, Christian John Bradley. I will see you next week. Let's go.